Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Lincoln Cage turned onto his gravel road, he expected peace, goats, and smoked cheddar, not a full-blown festival swarming across his land. His barn was a tourist trap, his pasture a parking lot. He didn't sign up for this, literally, and now it was time for war. By the time I turned onto my gravel road, I was already thinking about the smoked cheddar I'd picked up at the farmer's market. Simple pleasures, sharp cheese, fresh eggs, and peace. That was the whole point of moving out here. 140 acres of restored ranch land, a 2-mile driveway tucked between 2 rolling hills, and a view that didn't need editing. My plan for the evening was to unload the truck, feed the goats, and maybe put in a couple of hours rebuilding the north wall of the old barn before dusk. That plan evaporated the moment I saw the first orange traffic cone, then the second. Then a whole damn row of them curving gently along my private access road like a runway for idiots. Bright flags fluttered in the breeze, and next to a weather-worn oak tree stood a brand new sign staked into my fence line. I braked so hard the egg cartons on the seat beside me tipped. The sign read, "Overflow Parking for Copper Canyon HOA Events," in bold laminated lettering, neatly zip-tied, professional. I blinked, stepped out of my truck, and scanned the scene like I'd wandered into someone else's bad dream. My pasture, my land, was crawling with vehicles, SUVs, minivans, dusty crossovers with bike racks. Over 24 of them scattered across the grass, as if they had sprouted overnight. A couple of kids were tossing a frisbee next to my split-rail fence. A woman in yoga pants was walking a small dog dangerously close to my wellhead, and near the barn, my barn, the one I'd been restoring by hand for months, there was a pop-up canopy with 2 guys unloading coolers. Someone had even strung up battery-powered lanterns between posts I didn't put there. I walked toward the first person I saw, some college-age kid in a neon vest holding a clipboard like he was running security at Coachella. He smiled, oblivious. "Evening, sir. You a guest? Parking's free on Saturdays, but we do suggest a $5 donation to the HOA. I stared at him for a moment, wondering if I was having a stroke. "I live here," I said slowly. "This is my land. All of it." His smile didn't even flicker. "Oh, are you one of the vendors for tomorrow's festival? If so, you're probably supposed to check in down at the HOA tent by the cul-de-sac." "Son," I said, voice low and flat, "if you don't tell me exactly who authorized this disaster, I'm calling the sheriff." The clipboard dropped an inch. Finally, a crack in the performance. I think it was Karen. Karen Larson, she's the HOA president. Of course she is. I left him blinking and jogged toward the barn, cutting across rutted tire tracks in my carefully reseeded pasture. It wasn't until I rounded the structure that I saw the real scope of it. 2 acres at least, all marked out in spray paint and plastic ribbon, like some twisted suburban tailgate party. Cars were lined up in uneven rows. One RV had hooked a generator up to my fence post. Another group had laid out lawn chairs around a portable fire pit, and in front of it, a middle-aged couple grilling hot dogs. "Evening," the man called cheerfully when he saw me. "Is this the historic barn? We paid the HOA $5 for access. My kids are doing the scavenger hunt." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mouth was dry, and all I could do was stare at the laminated passes dangling from their necks like VIP badges to my own goddamn property. The woman smiled warmly and offered me a hot dog. "You volunteering?" They said there'd be staff from the AG Club. I turned and walked back to my truck without a word. I slammed the door, locked it, and drove straight to the steel gate near the entrance. I got out, hauled the chain from the back, and wrapped it around the posts, tight, reinforced, and padlocked. Then I grabbed my phone. "Dispatch," a woman answered after 2 rings. "This is Lincoln Cage, down on the old Copper Hollow Ranch. I need a sheriff's unit here now. There's a full-scale trespass happening on my land. Sir, is there danger present?" "Only if I don't get some answers fast." While I waited, I hiked back to the cabin, heart pounding. Grabbed my folder with the deed, my notarized HOA opt-out, my full county land plat, downloaded the latest security cam footage, and prepped the drone. I wasn't just angry, I was preparing for war, because whatever this was, it wasn't an accident. Somebody with a printer and an overinflated sense of authority had decided my land was theirs to rent. And I was just getting started. The first squad car rolled up 20 minutes later, crunching down my gravel road like it owned the place. The patrol lights weren't on, but the weight of that vehicle made a statement all the same, except no one seemed to care. Half the people on my land didn't even look up. A group of teens kept playing cornhole next to my generator shed. A golden retriever chased a drone across my hayfield, and someone had just started blaring acoustic country from what I swear was a Bluetooth speaker zip-tied to one of my fence posts. 2 deputies stepped out. The first was an older guy, mid-50s, boots dusty and belt tight. He adjusted his hat and scanned the chaos. The second was younger, straight out of academy mold, clean shave, mirrored glasses, walked like he thought he was already sheriff. I met them halfway down the lane, paperwork in hand. Deputies. Thanks for coming. The older one squinted at me. You the caller? I'm Lincoln Cage. This is my land. All of it. The younger one glanced past me toward the barn, where a group of adults had now set up lawn games. That so? I handed over my folder. Deed. Full plat from the county. Notarized opt-out from the Copper Canyon HOA when I purchased the property. It's stamped, sealed, and filed. There are no easements, no servitudes, no agreements. This is private agricultural land. The older deputy flipped through the folder slowly. The younger one pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of the scene behind me. Lot of people here, he muttered. None of them invited. The older deputy looked up. I'll be straight with you, Mr. Cage. We got a notice from HOA Copper Canyon last month. They submitted an event map and a letter of agreement, said the landowner had granted temporary use for overflow parking during their spring festivals. Said it was filed with the city. Did that agreement have my signature? That's what we're gonna check. No need, I said, flipping to the copy I'd printed just this morning. I handed them the forged document, dated, stamped, and complete with a shaky approximation of my name. The signature was laughable. Wrong slant, wrong pen. It looked like someone had signed it with a blindfold and a crayon. This isn't mine. Never signed it, never approved it. I don't care if Jesus Christ notarized it. This is fraud. The older deputy frowned and turned to his partner. Call it in. See who approved the filing on the city side. As the younger one stepped away, I pointed toward the barn. And while you're at it, get a look at the damage. I had to reseed that whole pasture last fall. It's ruined. I've got tire ruts, generator stakes, trash. There's a fire pit set up behind my hay shed. You got security footage? 2 cameras, 1 drone. All of it's time-stamped. He gave a nod that seemed more like a placeholder than agreement. That's when she arrived. Black SUV, high gloss, personalized plates that read, For Community. The vehicle pulled up just past the gate, my gate, and rolled to a stop like it had every right in the world to be there. Out stepped a woman in her late 50s, platinum bob, white blouse, clipboard in hand, and a smile so smug I could smell it before she opened her mouth. Officers, I'm so glad you're here. She strode forward, barely glancing at me. We've had some confusion with one of the volunteers. I believe everything's just a matter of crossed wires I cut in before she could get cozy. This you're doing. She finally turned to me, smile fixed like a realtor's headshot. Mr. Cage, isn't it? We did send you several notices. Your land is zoned for temporary overflow under the community events provision. No, it's not. It's not zoned for anything but private agricultural use. And I am not part of your HOA. I opted out. Legally, I have the paperwork. Well, we interpreted that differently. And since the land wasn't fenced or posted, I had a gate. And since it's adjacent to our HOA properties, and you're within visual proximity to our clubhouse, you think that makes it yours. The older deputy held up a hand. Ma'am, can you explain how this event was organized and who submitted the use agreement? Karen didn't even blink. Of course. The HOA board approved the event calendar 3 months ago, including all logistics. We filed the event permits with city services. Everything is properly documented and insured. And as I said, we did attempt contact with Mr. Cage. Multiple times. You mean your fake letter with my forged signature? She tilted her head, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum over crayons. We were under the impression it had been approved through community channels. If there's been a misunderstanding, we're happy to adjust. Adjust? Lady, you turned my land into a fairground. The deputy looked between us. We'll need to sort this through city records. Karen brightened. Of course. I have copies of everything in the car. Would you like them? I stepped back, trying to steady my breath. My hands weren't shaking. Not quite. But I could feel the burn under my skin. The rage, low and steady, because she wasn't here to apologize. She was here to talk in circles, cover her tracks, and buy time while her HOA made another buck selling tickets to my dirt. I turned to the younger deputy who was still on the phone. While she hands you her lies, I'll be at the house pulling up last week's drone flyovers. You'll see the tents, the cars, the goddamn bouncy castle they set up on my hayfield last Saturday. The older deputy nodded slowly. Understood. We'll be in touch soon. I didn't wait for a goodbye. I didn't sleep that night, not because of fear, but because I couldn't let myself. I sat in my office with the deed unfolded in front of me, security cam footage looping on a second screen, and my boots still caked in the dried filth of my own land. Around 2 in the morning, I emailed everything I had to my lawyer, Tanya Rivers, along with a single line in the subject. HOA forged my signature. Game on Tanya called me at 7 sharp. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. Get to the city clerk's office. Now, don't talk to anyone else. Don't send more emails. Just get there. I'll meet you outside. By 8. We were standing shoulder to shoulder on the concrete steps of the county administration building in Copper Ridge. Tanya was tall, lean, the kind of woman who wore flat shoes so she could walk faster than most men could run. Her hair was pulled back in a tight braid, and she carried a legal binder the width of a cinder block. She didn't bother shaking my hand. They filed something. I don't know how deep this goes yet, but they didn't just forge your signature, they filed it through municipal channels. If a clerk signed off, that's a whole other tier of trouble. We were let into the office by a bored-looking assistant, and the moment we mentioned the Copper Canyon event permits, she stiffened. You'll want records. 1 second, she vanished into the back like she was retrieving state secrets. 5 minutes later, she returned with a folder, a real one, with my name printed clearly across the top. Cage, Lincoln, Temporary Public Use Agreement, Event Overflow 03 to 04 to 06 to 10. I took the folder, opened it, and felt my stomach drop. There it was, a neatly typed cover letter on HOA letterhead. My name, my parcel number, my alleged agreement, dated 3 months ago, with a signature at the bottom that looked like someone had photocopied my grocery list and passed it off as a contract. Tanya leaned over and murmured, "This isn't just clumsy. This is deliberate. This was premeditated." We flipped further. There was a map, a satellite view of my land with a red dotted overlay, labeling 2 acres as Overflow Community Zone. A small note at the bottom read, "Usage authorized by L. Cage for temporary community functions." There was also a scanned form signed by a city permit officer, Seth Mallory. Tanya tapped his name with the end of her pen. "Recognize him?" "No," I said. "Should I?" "Not yet. But we're going to back outside." Tanya made a flurry of calls. She contacted a local forensic document examiner, filed a records request for Mallory's city correspondence, and had her assistant start pulling campaign donation records for the HOA board. She worked like she'd trained for this moment her whole life. That afternoon, we visited the assessor's office, just for good measure. That's where things got even uglier. A public computer terminal showed something I hadn't expected. My parcel was listed as Limited Use Parcel A, LUPA, with a temporary usage flag tagged under Community Permit Linkage, in plain English. According to county records, my private land had been reclassified as available for overflow municipal use. I scrolled through the logs, heart pounding. 6 weeks ago, a reassessment form had been processed by Mallory again, and it listed a signed agreement by landowner on file with HOA Copper Canyon. Tanya stood behind me, arms crossed. "They rewrote your map." "They what?" "They digitally overlaid a new boundary. Look at the shape. See this crescent along your driveway? That's not on your original plat. They didn't just fake your consent, they submitted a whole temporary division of your land." I wanted to punch something, preferably a wall, preferably Mallory. This is my land. I opted out. "It's written in the goddamn deed." Tanya smiled, grim and satisfied. "Then we burned them with it." She moved fast. That evening, she filed a cease and desist letter to the HOA, a temporary injunction request to prevent further use of my property, a criminal complaint regarding forged documents, and an official request for investigation into Mallory's actions directed to the State Municipal Integrity Board. Meanwhile, I did my part. I pulled all my drone footage from the last 2 months. Every Saturday, every event, every single line of cars trespassing across my soil. I documented every spray-painted arrow, every fire pit, every goddamn plastic chair abandoned near my barn. And then I got curious. I drove to the HOA clubhouse the next morning, pretending to be just another looky-loo. There was a community bulletin board inside, filled with event flyers, and one in particular stopped me cold. Visit the Heritage Ranch Barn, step into history, just $5. Part of our community culture days, Saturdays and Sundays. Underneath, my barn, my photograph, my goddamn drone photo stolen from my old blog. And in the fine print, managed in partnership with Heritage Ventures, LLC. I tore it down, folded it carefully, took it straight to Tanya. Her eyes gleamed. They're making money. Real money. And you didn't see a penny, did you? They've been charging admission to my land. Then we're not just going after forged permits now. We're going after them for fraud, commercial misuse, revenue skimming, tax evasion, and theft. I nodded, pulse steady. Good. Because I've got names, footage, and a list of license plates from every one of those Saturdays. She smiled wider. Then let's build a war chest. By Thursday, Tanya had subpoenaed the bank records of Heritage Ventures, LLC. She'd tracked the company through its tax ID and filed an emergency motion to freeze its event-related income accounts, citing imminent risk of ongoing fraud involving private property. The court granted it within 6 hours. Whatever they were raking in from my land, legally or not, was now locked up, and what they were raking in was worse than I thought. $19,486. That's how much they'd made since early March, according to the preliminary bank statement we received. Direct deposits from ticket vendors, Venmo and PayPal payments labeled Farm Tour, Barn Access, Historic Experience. HOA members were collecting digital payments for access to my pasture, my barn, my water line. Hell, even a trash fee labeled Cleanup Donation for Festival Parking. Tanya was livid. I'd never seen her speechless before. When the file opened, she actually let out a sharp breath through her nose and muttered, "That's bold. That's real bold." The worst part? There was an invoice filed from Heritage Ventures LLC to Copper Canyon HOA for event hosting space and cultural site use that referenced Parcel A, my parcel. The line item literally read, "Use of historic agricultural space, barn access, pasture, agreed rate, $1,000 per weekend, split 70-30 net profit." Split between who? I asked. Tanya rotated her screen. Between the HOA and the LLC. And the LLC is registered to a P.O. box in the next county. But guess whose name shows up as managing partner? I didn't want to guess, but I did. Karen. Karen Larson. And her husband, Richard Larson, is listed as the alternate signer. We had them, not just for trespassing, but for structuring a commercial venture on someone else's land and making real taxable income off it. I posted a no trespassing sign the size of a damn billboard at the front gate. Bright yellow, reflective lettering. Private agricultural land, not open to the public. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Then I bolted steel braces to the gate, reinforced the hinges, and added 2 trail cams aimed at different angles. But the damage had already been done. That afternoon, while walking the perimeter near the east fence line, I ran into a woman and her 2 kids setting up what looked like a makeshift picnic table on the edge of my property. "Ma'am," I said gently, "this is private land. You can't be here." "Oh," she said brightly, "but we paid the HOA for a barn tour. It's listed on their site as a family farm experience. We got our wristbands at the clubhouse." She held up her arm, a bright green paper band. HOA logo, QR code. I asked her how much she'd paid. $5 per person, plus 2 for the scavenger hunt. The girl at the table said it was part of the Heritage program, and that the barn is protected historical land. Is that not true? I told her the truth as calmly as I could. She turned pale. Her daughter looked at me and whispered, "Is this not the real barn?" "It's a real barn," I said. "But the people who sold you access to it don't own it." "I do." The mother apologized profusely. They left immediately. Later that night, I pulled up the HOA's official website. Tanya had already downloaded the contents into a folder for evidence. Under the Community Enrichment tab was a full calendar of family Saturdays, complete with language like, "Enjoy historic heritage barns, rustic trails, and rural picnic grounds right in our community's backyard." And beneath that, a small asterisk disclaimer that said, Portions of the space operated in partnership with Heritage Ventures, LLC. Disgusting, I muttered. They made it look like it was all theirs. That weekend, Tanya arranged a meeting with a local investigative journalist named Claire Monroe. Sharp, no nonsense, worked with the Copper Ridge Gazette. Claire had been sniffing around HOA-related fraud for over a year, and this was her jackpot. We gave her everything: the documents, the fake event permits, the bank transfers, the photos. She nodded the whole time, lips tight. They did this without your consent. Forged it, filed it, rewrote the parcel map. Ever see a dime? Not a penny. Claire's article dropped Monday morning. Front page, full color. Title in bold: HOA profits off private ranch without consent. Owner claims forgery, fraud, and theft. The subtitle stung: $19,000 made in 2 months off unauthorized farm access in Copper Canyon subdivision. It went viral, not just locally. HOA watchdog forums picked it up. Agricultural land rights groups reposted it. Even a regional TV station called and asked if I'd be willing to speak on camera. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. Meanwhile, Tanya submitted a formal complaint to the State Board of Real Estate Fraud, as well as a request for an emergency hearing before the County Zoning Review Committee. She wanted a full retraction of the parcel change and a disciplinary hearing for every city official who had signed off on the fraud. Then came the call. It was a neighbor, Frank West, who lived on the edge of Copper Canyon. A quiet man, retired trucker, Vietnam vet. We'd spoken once or twice at the feed store. "Lincoln," he said, voice grave. "You got a minute?" "Sure, Frank. What's up?" "You should know. Karen's been saying you're trying to take land from the HOA. Spreading flyers. Says you're suing the whole community, not just her." I felt the blood drain from my face. "She's weaponizing the lie," I said. "She knows she's cornered." Frank paused. "You didn't hear this from me, but there's a board meeting tomorrow night. Closed door, HOA leadership only. No minutes. I think they're planning something I barely slept that night." Between Claire's article exploding across every local group and Frank's cryptic warning about a closed-door HOA meeting, I kept pacing between the windows of my cabin, checking the live feed from every trail cam and drone in rotation. Every sound in the woods set me on edge. I wasn't just defending my land anymore, I was defending the truth. By mid-morning, Tanya had submitted a motion for an emergency court injunction to bar any physical interference with the property by Copper Canyon HOA, Heritage Ventures, or their agents. It was fast-tracked, and by 3 p.m., we had it signed by the judge and notarized. A protective order was officially on file. No construction, removal, signage, or infrastructure alterations may be made on Parcel A without owner consent. Good. Let them try something now. And they did. At exactly 7:35 the next morning, before coffee, before I'd even opened the chicken coops, I heard the unmistakable clank of heavy machinery. I grabbed my phone, unlocked the back door, and stepped onto the porch. Down the access road, a flatbed utility truck was reversing slowly, followed by a bright yellow mini excavator and 3 men in reflective vests. The logo printed on the truck door made my jaw clench. Copper Canyon Maintenance Division. They stopped right at the gate. One of the men, a stocky guy with wraparound sunglasses and a clipboard, hopped out and started pacing in front of my locked entrance like he owned the place. Another pulled a laminated document from a folder and duct-taped it to the gatepost. I walked up, slow but firm. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The guy with the clipboard didn't even look at me. He gestured at the excavator with a nod and said, "We're here to remove the unauthorized barrier. Easement access for the community. HOA directive." I ripped the laminated sheet off the post. It was a phony-looking access clearance form, citing made-up code violations and referencing a community service easement granted in 2023. It had my name on it, wrong font, wrong seal, and the signature, not mine. "You touch that gate," I said, raising my voice now, "and you'll be violating a court-ordered injunction." Clipboard guy blinked. "Excuse me." I held up the certified court order and pointed to the highlighted clause. "Any interference with this gate, or any structure on this land, is subject to civil and criminal penalties. You want to explain this to the sheriff?" He frowned, glanced back at his crew, and nodded. They all piled into the truck and reversed out without another word. I took a photo of each plate and immediately sent them to Tanya. Crisis averted, for now. But 6 hours later, I got a motion alert on my trail cam. It was nearly dusk. I was back in the cabin taking a call from Claire when my phone buzzed. I checked the footage. Grainy infrared video. A pickup truck rolling up to the gate. 2 figures in hoodies jumped out. One had bolt cutters. The other pulled something heavy, maybe a tow chain. They worked fast. In under 3 minutes, the entire front gate was unhinged, dragged off its posts, and dumped in the brush beside the road. Then they disappeared back into the dark. I drove out there 10 minutes later with a flashlight and saw the damage myself. The gate, reinforced steel, custom welded, bolted with concrete anchors, was torn down like it was paper. I checked the trail cam housing. Smashed. Lens shattered. But I'd backed up the video to the cloud. They'd be on file, clear enough for someone to ID. Tanya drove over at midnight with her laptop and a portable hard drive. We reviewed the footage frame by frame. The truck had a bumper sticker. Support local HOAs. License plate partially visible. Definitely registered in the Copper Canyon area. This is targeted, Tanya said flatly. They knew the cameras. They knew the blind spots. This wasn't some random vandalism, I agreed. The only question was whether they had the gall to do it after a court injunction, or if they didn't care at all. The next morning, we submitted video evidence, photographs, and an amended complaint to the sheriff's office. I also demanded enforcement of the injunction and an immediate investigation into the willful destruction of security infrastructure on private agricultural land. But then came the kicker. Around noon, while waiting for a callback from the sheriff, I spotted a new listing online on the HOA's event page. Buried in the calendar for the weekend was a bold announcement. Heritage Spring Fest, this Saturday. Expanded parking and barn walkthroughs, family scavenger hunt, food vendors, live folk band. Suggested donation $5 per person. The photo, my barn, blurred slightly, but still unmistakably mine. They had torn down my gate so they could use my land again. Knowing it was illegal, knowing we had evidence, Claire called 5 minutes later. Lincoln. I've got 2 sources saying HOA leadership met last night to approve a motion to neutralize access disruptions and secure community recreational assets. One of those assets, apparently, is your land. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was war. By Friday, the barn looked like a war zone. My downed gate still lay twisted near the drainage ditch, the concrete bolts torn out like teeth. I dragged it partially back into place with the tractor, but it didn't matter. They had left the entrance wide open, and the message was clear. They were coming, with or without permission. Saturday morning, they arrived. I had set up a folding chair on my porch at sunrise, hot coffee in one hand, binoculars in the other. Tanya was already back at her office drafting a contempt filing for the HOA's willful violation of court orders. Meanwhile, I sat like a frontier sentry, watching the enemy arrive. By 10 a.m., cars began rolling in, SUVs, vans, even a school bus. They didn't stop at the broken gate. They rolled right in, just like last time, parked across my pasture, and strolled toward the barn like they were visiting Disneyland. I counted over 50 vehicles before I stopped counting. A couple of HOA volunteers even strung up bunting along the old fence posts and erected a tent with a cheesy plywood sign. Welcome to Heritage Barn Days. Unreal. I marched down there with a folder under my arm, wearing a GPORO on my chest. I filmed every inch. The parking area, the ticket table, the families barbecuing by my irrigation trench, a local bluegrass band setting up their sound check. At the edge of the barn, I found the nerve center, folding tables, volunteers in matching shirts, and a woman handing out wristbands. Karen herself wasn't visible, but I spotted a man I'd seen at the HOA office. Gray-haired, smug, with a tablet in hand. His name was Hal, community liaison. I walked straight up and asked him if he knew whose land this was. Of course, he smiled. It's shared heritage property, part of the extended community zone. No, it's not, I snapped, holding up my phone with the digital deed. This is my land. Private parcel. You're trespassing. Again, Hal's expression barely flickered. You're misinformed, Mr. Cage. You agreed to limited use. It's on record. We have signed consent. There it was again. That smug confidence. I turned on the GoPro and pressed record. Show me. He hesitated, then tapped through his tablet and held it up. A document appeared on the screen titled Temporary Use Agreement for Recreational Access, Parcel A. My name typed at the bottom, a signature that vaguely resembled mine. Stamped by the Office of Public Events and Community Programs, County of Fremont. I stepped back like it burned me. Where'd you get this? He shrugged. Filed last month. You'd have to take it up with the mayor's office. I turned on my heel and walked straight back to my cabin. It wasn't a bluff anymore. This wasn't just an HOA gone rogue. They had falsified a government filing. Or worse, someone in the county had helped them do it. By 2 p.m., Tanya had driven out in person. She brought copies of the injunction and stood beside me while we called the sheriff. Again. This time, an actual deputy showed up, walked the perimeter with us, took our statements, and filmed some of the crowd. But enforcement? Nope. We'll have to verify the property status, he said. And if there's a county event permit filed, we may not have grounds to shut it down immediately. That's when I realized how deep it went. We left the festival to fester and drove straight to the county records office. Tanya was furious. I was shaking. Inside the dusty hallway of the municipal annex, we waited 30 minutes while a clerk brought out the requested file. When it arrived, Tanya opened it like a bomb. Inside was the same form Hal had flashed on his tablet. Same fake agreement. Same manipulated map, showing my property outlined in a light purple haze labeled Temporary Community Overlay. It even had a file code and a submission number, but then Tanya flipped the second page. That's where it got interesting. There, in black and white, was a letter of transmittal from someone named Elliot Graves, listed as a temporary project coordinator for community zoning initiatives. The letter claimed that I had verbally approved access and that signature confirmation was completed digitally via proxy as permitted under Ordinance 142B. Lincoln, Tanya muttered, this is fraud. Brazen, formalized fraud. I'd never heard of Graves. Neither had Tanya. She took a photo of the form and sent it to her investigator friend at the Attorney General's office. Then we pulled a copy of the zoning ordinance they cited. There was no such ordinance. It was completely made up. Tanya turned to the clerk and asked to speak to their supervisor. The poor kid paled and disappeared into the back. Minutes later, an older woman came out, a senior records officer. She examined the form, looked at us, and said carefully, "That is not an official format we use. This looks added in. Do you mind leaving this with us while we open an internal inquiry?" We agreed. Tanya had already scanned every page anyway. As we walked out of the building, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about my land anymore. This was a conspiracy, propped up by forged permits, rubber-stamped events, and signatures that weren't mine. But we had proof now, and we were going to blow the lid off it. We got home just before sunset. Tanya stayed for dinner. Neither of us wanted to sit alone with our thoughts after what we'd seen at the records office. She called her contact at the Colorado State Land Commission and looped them in. I uploaded everything, photos, videos, scans, into a shared drive and began drafting a public statement. I wasn't usually the type to go loud, but at this point, silence felt like surrender. By morning, it was everywhere. Local news picked it up first. HOA. Accused of forging county permits for illegal parking festival. Then the big outlets followed. By midday, the headline was running on regional radio and even a Denver affiliate. Copper Canyon HOA caught in alleged land grab scheme. I started getting calls from journalists, some polite, some hungry. The local paper even sent a drone crew. Meanwhile, Tanya filed an emergency motion to escalate the court's prior injunction into a protective order with enforcement teeth. We weren't playing defense anymore, but neither were they. That same day, a manila envelope appeared wedged into the broken gatepost. No postage, no return address, just my name, L. Cage, in block letters. Inside, a single folded sheet of paper, no seal, no signature. Just one line printed in Times New Roman. You're not the only one who knows how to play dirty. That night, I barely slept. I ran full security checks on the cabin, door cams, motion sensors, floodlights. My trail cams were already recording every inch of the driveway and barn perimeter. Still, something in my gut told me they weren't done. I was right. At 3:42 a.m., my south-facing camera lit up. A large truck crept down the gravel path. Lights off, engine rumbling low, then two more. They didn't stop at the barn. They headed straight for the old irrigation ditch, where I'd left the secondary gate chain-locked. I flipped open my laptop, tapped into the feed. Night vision kicked in. They were hauling a bobcat loader, shovels, bolt cutters. No markings, no uniforms, just hoodies and gloves. One guy lit a cigarette while another walked to the gate and inspected the lock. They weren't here to park. They were here to erase boundaries. I called Tanya, then the county sheriff's emergency line. I gave them the coordinates, the footage, the number of intruders. Do not engage. The dispatcher said, "We're sending a unit." I didn't wait. I pulled on boots and my old flannel, grabbed my shotgun not to fire it, just to be seen holding it, and walked straight down the hill toward the gate, headlamp on full. They saw me coming and froze. I stopped just outside the tree line and shouted, "You've got about 10 seconds before the sheriff arrives. And you're all on camera." One guy raised his hands. Another spat on the ground. Then they backed off, quiet, fast, slipping into their trucks and vanishing down the path. When the sheriff finally arrived, they took my statement, downloaded the footage, and promised an investigation. But the deputy, same guy as before, looked tired. "This isn't just trespass anymore," he said. "This looks like organized sabotage." We both knew he was right. The next morning, I found new tire tracks looping around the edge of my barn and up near the back fence. Deep, heavy ruts I hadn't seen before. They'd tried to scout a new entry, maybe to circumvent the gate. Maybe to set up an alternate parking zone. I followed the trail into the trees and found something worse. A box of construction stakes, pink ribbon, spray cans, surveyor flags. Someone had started prepping new boundary lines. I stared at them for a long time. My breath fogged. Then I took out my phone, snapped photos, and sent them to Tanya. That was the final straw. We weren't just up against HOA fraud anymore. We were up against a coordinated land seizure operating under the illusion of legitimacy. The gloves were off. The next 48 hours felt like a siege. Tanya filed everything, video, drone footage, the forged documents, the midnight intrusion, into a formal complaint to the state attorney general's office. She also pushed through a temporary restraining order with teeth, allowing law enforcement to remove trespassers immediately. This time, the court approved it within hours. Meanwhile, I stayed on high alert. I barely left the house, and when I did, I carried my GoPro and a printed court order in my back pocket. My trail cams caught 2 more attempts to breach the southern tree line, but the new patrols from the sheriff's office kept them at bay. Then, finally, came the break. The Land Commission investigator, prompted by Tanya's complaint, uncovered internal emails between Karen Larson, the HOA president, and Elliot Graves, the fake county official whose name was on the forged permit. Only problem was, Elliot Graves didn't exist. The emails trace back to a domain registered to Heritage Ventures, LLC, a front company created by Karen's brother. Turns out, Heritage Ventures had already submitted paperwork to lease unused parcels from the HOA, including my land, fraudulently listed as part of the Copper Canyon zoning map. And even worse, a payment of $19,000 had been made from the HOA account to Heritage Ventures labeled Event Logistics and Parking Development. The state had enough. That Friday, Karen was arrested on charges of document forgery, trespass, wire fraud, criminal misrepresentation, and conspiracy to commit land theft. Her house was raided. The fake permits, stamps, and maps were confiscated. It didn't stop there. The county zoning official who overlooked the forged map was fired and is now under investigation. The HOA board members were hit with subpoenas, and several have lawyered up. Copper Canyon HOA? Dissolved by emergency court order, all assets frozen pending litigation. As for me, I got full restitution. The court awarded me $850,000 in damages and legal fees. Tanya and I celebrated with coffee and a quiet moment on the porch. It wasn't about the money. It was about knowing the line had held. I rebuilt the gate, this time steel and stone with a hand-forged sign that reads, "Not for sale, not for rent, and definitely not for HOA." I reopened the barn as a heritage site, on my own terms. School kids come for field trips. Veterans tour the pasture and share stories. I don't charge a dime. And every April Fool's Day, I host a little event. We call it the Anti-HOA Festival. There's music, barbecue, laughter, and parking. Oh, we have plenty. Right next to a sign that reads, "Here lies the HOA's last parking lot. RIP."